And welcome to this special edition of Global Insights on China's economy, a series of high-end interviews with movers and shakers, economists and industry watchers. I'm Li Xin in Beijing. Our guest today is Lionel Barber, an author, broadcaster and former editor-in-chief of the Financial Times. Check out his insights on how China's growth model has been changing.
Lionel Barber joined the Financial Times in 1985 and served as its editor from 2005 to 2020. He has earned numerous honors as a highly respected figure in journalism, renowned for his sharp analysis, visionary leadership, and profound insight into global economic and political affairs. He has interviewed many of the world's leaders, including Russian President Vladimir Putin, former U.S. President Barack Obama, and former U.S. President Donald Trump. Having visited China since his teens, Lionel Barber has witnessed firsthand China's development model and the real-world changes on the ground.
Let's talk about the Chinese economy. I'm sure you've been following the series of announcements and measures that China has rolled out. What do you think of, first of all, the state of the economy to start with, and secondly, the purpose and effectiveness of the measures? It's a big question, I know. Take it step by step.
Well, let's not talk about the numbers at the beginning, because they're not always reliable. What we can talk about is what we absolutely know, which is an extraordinary success story of the Chinese economy over the last 20, 30 years. In the period of reform, in the period after joining the World Trade Organization, and the underlying strength of the economy. For example, in electric vehicles. But China right now has a problem in slow growth. The economy is maybe not moribund, but certainly it's not growing. It's probably not growing at 5%. And the problem is consumption. People are not buying enough goods and services. The second is that Chinese authorities correctly identified the real estate bubble, and they acted consciously to deal with it. But obviously this is taking a lot of time to work through the system. So these are the twin problems. There have been, as you say, I would not say a stimulation package, but a relief package for the Chinese economy. And that will have its effect, but more needs to be done.
China is actually acknowledging the difficulties, the challenges that the economy is faced with. But China really talks about a transition towards high quality growth instead of the lower quality or higher quantity growth that has been the characteristics over the past 2-3 decades. Do you think this characterization correctly sums up the kind of period that China is going through?
I do think it's an accurate picture, and I think that what the Chinese government has done to try and start moving away from this investment-driven model, which was very successful for a long time, to try to rebalance in favor of the consumer. And I should acknowledge what China is also doing in terms of green energy transition and cleaning up the economy from an environmental point of view. But people have lost a lot of money on real estate. People invested their savings in real estate. That's natural in the absence of a comprehensive safety net.
Local debt is one of the challenges. To combat this, China has raised the local government debt ceiling, providing local governments with 10 trillion yuan of resources to swap their accumulated hidden debts. With an additional 2 trillion yuan coming from housing improvement projects due after 2029, China's local governments will be left with only 2.3 trillion yuan in hidden debts by 2028, down from 14.3 trillion yuan. This enables resources originally allocated for debt repayment to be freed up to promote development and improve people's livelihoods. It will also create more policy space, which would otherwise be constrained by debt pressures, enabling greater support for investment, consumption, and technological innovation. Taken together with other new reforms, these moves are expected to deliver the steady and ongoing high-quality development of the Chinese economy.
What do you think of the huge tax, the huge hidden debt relief package that the government wrote out? There is talk of 10 trillion yuan over the next 5 to 8 years. And it's a rather unprecedented way of dealing with hidden debt on the local level. From your expertise as one of the most influential financial publications in the world, how do you see it? Do you have questions for this kind of practice? Do you think it might work, but?
Well, as you pointed out, I did work for 35 years at the Financial Times. I was editor-in-chief for 14 years. I don't work for the Financial Times now, but I observe and I'm involved in looking at various economies, and including China's. And what I would say from my own experience is I went through the banking crisis, the savings and loan crisis in America in the late 80s, and I also went through the global financial crisis where China played an extremely important role in helping save the world economy with its reflation package. But in those two instances regarding debt and banks that were in terrible trouble or gone bust, you needed to have a relief package. And that's what the Chinese authorities are doing. So I don't know the precise details, but the general principle I approve of. And if you're going to go, you either go, we say in America, you either go big or you go home.
And one thing that I have noticed watching, the various programs and reading the various articles about analysis is the emphasis putting on transparency. For instance, China published for the very first time ever the exact amount of hidden local debts. This is one thing. Secondly, they published the amount of state-owned assets. And to me, that's encouraging language.
It is encouraging. As I say, I'd like to know whether they really have got their arms around the whole problem. Maybe. But the more important issue is what you've just said, which is the Chinese authorities clearly feel that transparency, as best they can, is the best way to restore confidence, and they're thinking about the financial markets. And that is correct, because they are trying to manage expectations, but also instill confidence in investors that they've got a handle on this. And in that, I applaud what they're doing.
Overall, from a Western perspective, do you think that there is really a correct, an objective, neutral understanding about the Chinese economy? Because we're really seeing a lot of very critical analysis, and coming from your background, your position, and also you have traveled here, you have talked, you have seen how people are, how the business and life is. Do you think there may be an overly negative portrayal of the Chinese economy? Because that's our impression working in the Chinese media.
I think people have to be careful about being overly negative because, as I said, there's been a tremendous success story of the last 20 years, and people may be underestimating the underlying resilience of the economy, the capacity for policy innovation in the government, and just the long-term commitment to improve the welfare of China's population. I mean, there's a strong political commitment there. But at the same time, people worry about the incentives for the private sector. They worry also about arbitrary actions against foreign companies that are invested in China. So these things create uncertainty. The last point is that China, as I said, has a formidable technology base, formidable manufacturing, and if you look at the electric cars, where this is this is a great success story, but people now making their own cars in Germany or in America, they think that their industry could be swamped. So this is some of the background why people are going to take protectionist measures.